Hi everyone. I'm going to describe Redux and why we need Redux, or why we should use Redux, or when we should use Redux in React Native or in ReactJS. In normal circumstances, if you have a simple project, you actually do not need Redux because React Native itself, ReactJS itself, already has ways of handling state. For instance, if you needed, you could save the state up here in blog and pass it as props to your child component latest blogs. This you could also have in this homepage. You have also a need for data, but then because of that, you would need to, in the state of the homepage, you would have to keep track of state here and pass it as props to sidebar. The problem is this is duplicating effort. This child and this child both need the same data, but they have different parents and they're a different side of the tree. So there's a lot of work, extra, like double the work of saving this state here, passing it down as props, saving the state here and passing it down as props. It's double the work for the same exact data used by two different child or grandchild components. And the other way is if this parent is what's in common, this grandparent actually is what's in common to this child and this child. So you would put state all the way here and have to pass it one generation to another generation here, and one generation, another generation here. That's a lot of extra library keeping track effort for just these two needing it. Redux saves you from doing that. Actually, to go even further on the complicated way, sometimes you have the convoluted way of this blog, the data in this blog going up and then down to get here. But Redux anyway saves you from all that hassle. You can directly access the state. There's a global state. There's a central data store basically with all the global state that everyone can equally use and access directly without this state passing as props all over the place. The thing is though, you want to make sure that you do it in an orderly fashion. That means that many different components like sidebar, latest blogs need the state, but you can't have one guy accessing the state directly and messing it up for another component. So sidebar, you can't just directly access and change the state and override it because it might mess up latest blogs. That's why there's a process to make things orderly. The component, rather than going direct and changing the global state, has to first dispatch an action. The action is a human understood action, a human understood command, add post. The add post could have some data. This is the verb, add post, but it could have, depending on the action, you might need data. In this case, a payload called the post. Payload is basically the data that comes along with the action. This action needs data. Add post needs a post. So post is the payload. That's defining the action, but actually executing the action is dispatch. Dispatch is like, oh yeah, I defined the action. Let's go and do it. So you dispatch the action. Let's see, I actually had an example. Yeah, here's an example of the action, dispatching action. Increment, decrement, decrement. But where did I define increment, decrement, decrement? I defined it up here. Here's the action. I've defined increment and decrement as my actions. And now I'm saying go ahead and do increment and decrement. But the next step, those are the human, that's the command in human terms. But what does that translate into in computer terms? That's the job of the reducer. The action is what I'm telling it. Oh, add post. What does it mean for the computer to add post? That is what the job of the reducer is, and I have some more slides for that. So let me get rid of this. Go to here. So you see, add to do. What it means is I'm going to change the state, but for my to-dos array, I'm going to add more to it. The to-dos array has some existing, this ... means take the existing to-dos and add to it my new to-do. So that's what it means to add to do. This is human, this is the action, what humans can understand. And this is actually the implementation that the computer does. Next. So let me go through, since I have this up now, let's go through it. You create a store, you take it from Redux library. That's called destructuring. And you give it initial state. So start off with to-dos is an empty array. Post is an empty array. Then this is my reducer. This is this reducer, which takes in the state, initial state. So state equals init state, which is defined here, and the action that you want. In the action, depending on the action, you'll know what to do with state. In this case, the action is add to do. And like I said before, you start off with the state as it was, which is this, and you just add this step. You add the new to-dos, but the new to-dos also starts off with the old to-dos, state.to-dos, and you add the new to-do. This ... is state. State without any .to-dos. That means general state. State means to-dos and posts. This entire state. This ... state .to-dos is just the to-dos part. So first you take the entire state, which is to-dos and posts. That's this ... state. And then from the to-dos portion, you take the existing to-dos, which is ... state .to-dos, and add the new to-do. And on the left-hand side, if you can see it, I'm showing 2 runs of this program, but the first time the posts are missing because when this was first run, I didn't have a ... Basically, without this ... when it said return to-dos without this ... state, it thought I no longer need posts. So it interpreted it literally. Before, when this return didn't have line 11, it just took to-dos, and that to-dos was the entire new state. So initial state had to-dos and posts, but this, without this ... state, line 11, we just replace this to-dos and posts with a single to-dos array. And that's what this happened. To-dos by milk. This is the first one, which was the code before this was added. Here's the second run after adding the ... state, which is correct. This is what we really want. You start off with to-dos and posts, empty, 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 and you take the to-dos, take the current to-dos, which is empty in this case, and you add the payload, action to do. The action to do was add the payload by milk. So that's these lines, lines 1 to 17. Next, lines 3 to 19, which is actually 18 and 19. Lines 18 and 19 is basically saying I have more than one action I decide. I showed you add to do, but of course, this action could also be add post. It could be either add to do or add post, depending on what's dispatched. If it's add post, you still take the current state, which is both to-dos and posts. But in this case, you take the posts and update them. So post : .state.post is the post as it exists at the moment. This might have a few posts already. And then do action.post, which is add the new post, which is the payload post. That is lines 18 and 19. Next, let's move on. This will be lines 20 to 30. 20 to 30. Okay, start with line 24. Constant store equals create store my reducer. This showing you got to use this create store. This is a key method. Create store. And it takes one argument in this case. Well, one argument for the reducer. You cannot take multiple reducers. It needs one reducer, one top level reducer that includes all the reducers. That's why we have something called combined reducer. And then from this create store acting on this top level reducer, we can call it whatever we want. Store, my store, whatever. And then you store.subscribe. That is when your components want to listen to what happens with the state. So whenever the state changes, it's gonna do these commands that are in this curly braces. It's gonna console.log state updated, and it's gonna console.log whatever's in the store. Store.getState. It's gonna show what's in the store. So this is lines up to line 30. Finally, let's get to line 31 to 34. 31 to 34 is just the dispatch. So I'm dispatching add to do, add post. Add to do with buy milk. So that's what this, add to do buy milk. Add to do sleep some more. So this next part, you added sleep some more to buy milk. Add post, egg hunt with Yoshi. So now you know to-dos is the same, but add posts, egg hunt with Yoshi. So if you go back to the ... when it goes to this line 32, add to do, sleep some more, it took ... to-dos, which was buy milk. ... to-dos was basically buy milk. And it added the new one, sleep some more. All right, so that is an overview of Redux in React Native.